There was a woman, she was laying dead on the ground with a bike under her. So it literally looked like she was just riding her bike and somebody shot her. They say they're trying to hit military installations, yet they're hitting civilian targets and disabling civilians from having electricity and water.
When you left Ukraine, what is the current state of the conflict out there?
He said, when this whole thing started, I mean, he was just in disbelief. He couldn't believe it. He got a call from his friend at 4 a.m. saying that the troops have come in and the war has started and there's military action all over the place and you're just kind of like in this shock and disbelief. And obviously, as the time goes on, you realize this is the reality and it's happening. Um, and it's tragic. War is tragic no matter where it happens or how it happens, especially when it happens on your homeland. As far as, his view on the whole thing, I mean, he's baffled. He has no earthly idea why Russia would invade Ukraine, what they want there, why the president of Russia would turn his people against Ukraine, so drastically. What is their objective? They're obviously there under false pretenses, and everything they've been saying is false. They say they're trying to hit military installations, yet they're hitting civilian targets and disabling civilians from having electricity and water. People are suffering. There's obviously been reports, and it's all true, of horrendous atrocities that the soldiers on the ground are conducting against the civilian populations, with women being raped and just people tortured. It's just terrible. I mean, this whole thing is terrible. Hopefully, it'll end soon. He's just baffled. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no logic to it. So
About the reports of Russia deliberately targeting civilians and committing atrocities and acts of torture, were these things that you witnessed firsthand yourself?
Ooh. Listen, I can tell you what I've seen myself. No rumors, no some stories somebody said to somebody. When we were liberating my hometown, there's a town right next to mine called Bucha. It's right next to our hometown. And when we went in to liberate it from the Russian troops, which we did, there was a very long street there, and they named it the Street of Death. And on this street, to the left and to the right, were lined up nothing but corpses of women, children, elderly women. There was a woman. He remembers seeing her. She was laying dead on the ground with a bike under her. So it literally looked like she was just riding her bike and somebody shot her, and she was just dead. And this was a very long street and endless amount of people, and none of them were military, none of them were soldiers, none of them were involved in any kind of military activity. These were all civilians. These were all women, children, elderly. And as the people that survived that were hidden, as they saw the Ukrainian troop, as they saw them basically walking through, they came out, and obviously they were in tears. They were hugging him. They just couldn't believe that they've been liberated, that the city's been freed. And as they kind of walked around the town delivering fresh bread, because it's all they had, to people, people would come out and just cry and were just happy to eat. And it's terrible. And he doesn't understand what would possess a soldier to be this cruel. What kind of hate could they build up against somebody they don't even know? To kill a child, to kill a mother, to shoot an elderly woman for no reason. Um, or who would give an order to do such a thing, and who would execute it? Where does all this hate come from? Um, Against civilians, it's unbelievable. It's just impossible to fathom. And these are things he saw with his own eyes as they were liberating the city. This isn't just some fairy tale, some story that somebody told him. And as far as bombings, he saw that too. Civilian installations being bombed for no reason. They're not providing any strategic advantage. They're just bombed because they can. I wanted to add to it, like even right now, you hear, there's bombings in Kiev, there's bombings everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason to it. These aren't military installations. This is just bombing because they can. It's just to, disrupt the flow, disrupt any kind of return to normalcy. You could be a person that just left the house just to go get some food, and all of a sudden a bomb will hit and you'll die just for no reason. It's just hard to wrap your head around it. Like this conflict is so mind blowing, and the atrocities that these people are performing is just so terrible that you just start to wonder, like, what kind of human being would do this? There's no human being would do this because they have no reason to do this. There's no reason to kill children and elderly. And this street that he spoke of in Buka that the troops laid in. So these corpses lay there for 2 to 3 weeks. The soldiers would not let people take their loved ones away and bury them or just get them off the street. They would literally just leave it there. Like, who does that? Like, why would you do that?
There was footage of you retrieving your Bellator belt from the rubble. How did that feel to do such an act?
So when the war first started, obviously, I wasn't thinking about any of that. But as we've liberated my city and the cities nearby in central Ukraine, and things, I wouldn't say it went back to normal, but got more normal than they were. I started thinking about my belt. So I remember my mom telling me where she hid it. We went back to my house and I was able to retrieve it, and I loved it. It reminded me how I won it. It gave me a little bit of hope that one day I'm going to return back to fighting and I'm going to defend this belt. And it just made me happy. It was a good distraction.
Emotionally, what is your current state?
At first, it wasn't easy. Now I've kind of acclimated. At first, it was hard. I wasn't sleeping well. I was very worried. I just didn't feel good. But now I've calmed down and I'm much better.
How does it feel to be leaving Ukraine and returning to competition?
I feel great. It's been a little while since I left Ukraine, so I've able to kind of acclimate and calm down a little bit and be able to have some productive training and be focused on my training.
Your upcoming fight with Logan Storley on the 25th of February. Did you see his fight with Michael Venom Page? You had the striker against the pure wrestler. How do you feel about your chances of defeating him on the 25th of February? And are you feeling a renewed sense of motivation coming back from Ukraine about the fight?
Yeah, I saw the fight. I mean, I can't say I was surprised. I kind of expected that to happen. I think the only way MVP was going to win that fight is if he would have landed a punch or had some kind of knockout. But I was 80% confident that Storley is going to win the fight. As far as my fight, he said, "Listen, I obviously have a whole different level of motivation to perform well for my country, to point out, to put my country on the map, be able to raise my country's flag.